With ethical hacking and penetration testing becoming mainstream in corporate environments, trained personnel and relevant equipment are in high demand. The right software framework can be the tipping point in a hacking campaign which deals with intricate hardware. One such tool that has become a mainstay for decades is Nmap. When it comes to scanning machines for open ports and services, Nmap has always been the first choice for hackers. Being lightweight and open source, Nmap has strong community backing and receives regular updates. Let's take a look at the topics to be covered today. We start by learning about the different phases in ethical hacking and where Nmap is most valuable to ethical hackers. We learn the basics of Nmap and its purpose during a penetration testing campaign. Next, we take a look at the top-level approach of Nmap as a scanning tool and how it conducts these scans on host machines. Moving on, we cover the multiple modes and types of scans that can be performed using Nmap on unsuspecting users. We also look at some alternatives that users can prefer if Nmap is not something they are comfortable with, while a live demonstration of the powers of Nmap will help in shedding light on the topics being taught today. Let us first understand where and why Nmap is essential. There are essentially 5 phases in ethical hacking. The reconnaissance phase is the first phase of the penetration test. Here, the security researcher collects information about the target. It can be done actively or passively or both. It helps security firms gather information about the target system, network components, active machines, etc. This activity can be performed by using the information publicly available and by using different tools. The scanning phase is more tool-oriented rather than being performed manually. The tester runs one or more scanner tools to gather more information about the target. By using various scanners such as war dialers, port scanners, network mappers, and vulnerability scanners, the penetration tester collects as many vulnerabilities which help in turn to attack a target in a more sophisticated manner. In the gaining access phase, the penetration tester tries to establish a connection with the target and exploit the vulnerabilities found in the previous phase. The exploitation may be a buffer overflow attack, denial of service attack, session hijacking, and many more. Basically, the penetration tester extracts information and sensitive data from the servers by gaining access with different tools. In the maintaining access phase, the penetration tester tries to create a backdoor for himself. It helps him to identify hidden vulnerabilities in the system while allowing him to come back to the system to retrieve more data further on. In the clearing tracks phase, the tester tries to remove all logs and footprints which might help the administrator identify his presence. This helps the tester to think like a hacker and perform corrective actions to mitigate those activities. Nmap is most beneficial in the early stages of ethical hacking where a hacker must figure the possible entry point to a system. It is necessary to know this before running the necessary exploits, thus allowing the hackers to leverage any insecure openings and breach the device. So the reconnaissance and the scanning phase are the points where Nmap finds the most use. Let us now understand what Nmap is from a layman's perspective. Nmap, which stands for Network Mapper, is a free and open source utility for network discovery and security auditing. Many systems and network administrators also find it useful for tasks such as network inventory, managing service upgrade schedules, and monitoring host and service uptime. The program is most commonly used via a command line interface and is available for many different operating systems such as Linux, FreeBSD, and Gentoo. It is most beneficial in the early stages of ethical hacking where a hacker must figure the possible entry point to a system before running the necessary exploits. Nmap was developed for enterprise-scale networks and can scan through thousands of connected devices. However, in recent years Nmap is being increasingly used by smaller companies as well. Nmap uses raw IP packets in novel ways to determine what hosts are available on the network, what services these hosts are offering, what operating systems they are running, what type of packet filters and firewalls are in use, and dozens of other characteristics. It was designed to rapidly scan large networks but works fine against single hosts as well. The rise of the IoT, in particular, now means that networks used by these companies have become more complex and therefore harder to secure. Since every application that connects to a network needs to do so via a port, the wrong port or server configuration can open a can of worms that leads to a thorough breach of the system. The recent emergence of IoT botnets like Mirai has also stimulated interest in Nmap, not least because of its ability to interrogate devices connected via the UPnP protocol, but also to highlight any devices that may be malicious. Now that we understand what Nmap is, let us take a look at the workflow of how an ethical hacker uses this tool in penetration testing. At a practical level, Nmap is used to provide detailed, real-time information on your networks and on the devices connected to them. We have the hacker running Nmap on a system, with a victim machine running a standard installation of the operating system, be it Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. The Nmap interface will send specially crafted packets to generate some reply from the victim machine. The victim machine in return will send some information back to the Nmap host with replying some of the services and hosts that are being run on the computers. Nmap allows the network admins to find which devices are running, discover some open ports and other services. This in turn helps discover the vulnerabilities and the possible entry points for hackers to breach into. We are now aware of how Nmap works on a basic level, but there are many varieties of scans that users can run on local machines. Let's take a look at some of them. The ping sweep is a simple type of Nmap scan where it pings to all the available IP addresses to check which IPs respond to ICMP protocol. If the users need to know only the number of IP addresses and not many details, the ping sweep is very useful. It's fast and hence the results to be known are fetched very easily. The SYN scan is the most useful type of Nmap scan which does work very quietly. It sends an SYN packet via the TCP protocol or the transfer control protocol to all the intended ports. If an acknowledgement pack is received to the system, it is sure that a port is opened there. No response means that the port is either closed or not available. Here the acknowledgement pack is not sent back to the system, assuming that the connection is not valid. The scan is not shown in most of the scan logs and hence it is safe to use SYN scan to identify the open ports. The TCP Connect scan is similar to SYN scan in many aspects as it uses the TCP layer to send packets and is passed to all the ports. Here, the difference is that the full connection is done by sending the acknowledgement packets back. The logs can easily find the TCP scan and need more power from the machines to do the work, but it is more accurate. If all the accesses related to the OS are available to the user, it is better to do a TCP scan than an SYN scan as all the low-level and high-level accesses are required for the scan. The network is also loaded more and hence users must be careful about overloading the system and the networks. The idle scan is really used to check whether any malicious attacks are planned on any particular network. Users need not control the external host, but an IP address and a port should be given to the same. All other requirements are taken from the scanner itself. The RPC scans or remote procedure calls are done by hackers to make the system vulnerable to virus attacks. It is thus necessary to know whether our systems answer such calls and make our system open to malware. RPC scan is done to check this by finding the ports open with certain commands being run by RPC. The Windows scan is a simple scan where the application scans the acknowledgement packets received from the ports once the SYN packets are sent. If there are any abnormalities in the ACK packets received, the scan reports the same and helps in recognizing which ports are functioning in a different manner. The bound scan is used to check the security in the file transfer protocol layer. FTP layers mostly do not accept any packets, and once it is rejected from the FTP layers, there are chances that it might be sent to an internal layer so that it can access the internal machines. Bound scan checks this loophole by doing exactly the same process and identifies whether our FTP layer is open to vulnerability or not. The FIN scan is similar to SYN scan where the system that sends the packets receives the response back and it will mostly be a TCP FIN packet. If the system sends an RST packet, it is a false alarm and users need not be worried about the same. The null scan is useful for other systems than Windows where the systems can easily identify what kind of packets they have received and respond back with either TCP packets or null responses. Null scans are not useful for Windows as they may not always produce the desired results. When it comes to looking at alternatives, there is a wide range of free network monitoring utilities as well as free open source vulnerability scanners available to network administrators and security auditors. What makes Nmap stand out as the tool IT and network security managers need to know is its flexibility and power. There are some alternatives to Nmap. but most of them are focused on providing specific niche functionality that the average system administrator does need frequently. MassScan, for instance, is much faster than Nmap, but provides less detail. In reality, however, Nmap provides all the functionality and speed that the average user requires, especially when used along with other similar tools like Netcat, which can be used to manage and control network traffic, and Zenmap, which provides a graphical user interface for Nmap. But as an all-rounder solution to network scanning, nobody can go wrong with Nmap as their tool of choice. Let's now take a tour of Nmap based on all the things we have covered today. In this live demonstration, we start by learning of how to install Nmap on a fresh operating system that doesn't come pre-installed with the tool. We also cover the different types of scans that can be run on local machines, along with checking multiple inferences an ethical hacker can gather based on the scan output of an Nmap screen. Finally, we run scans on vulnerable machines to get an idea of how to proceed with the outputs we gather using this tool.
If getting your learning started is half the battle, what if you could do that for free? Visit SkillUp by Simplilearn. Click on the link in the description to know more.
The first step in our demonstration is installing Nmap. Now it depends heavily on what Linux distribution you're going to use to perform ethical hacking. Right now I'm using Parrot Security operating system. If you're not aware of what Parrot Security is or even what Kali Linux is, we highly suggest that you check out the videos of those two operating systems on our YouTube channel so that you can get a fair idea of what they serve. Now, if you are using any of these two operating systems, Nmap should come pre-installed by default. To check if Nmap is pre-installed or not, you can just press on Applications over here, go to the pen testing section, go to this Information Gathering tab, and you should be able to see Nmap right here. Now let's say you do not have Nmap pre-installed. Maybe you're using a Linux distribution like Ubuntu or Linux Mint or something that is based on Debian operating systems. One thing you have to make sure that Nmap should be in the distribution repository. Once you check that, or even if you do not know if it is present, you can just this command. It should be sudo, which is to give root permissions for installation, apt. apt is the package manager of all Linux distributions that are based on Debian. That goes for Debian Stable, Ubuntu, Linux Mint, Kali Linux, Parrot Security, and anything of that nature. apt is the package manager which handles the installation and removal of applications in these specific operating systems. Once you're here, just write install and Nmap. Press enter and it's going to ask you for the root password that you set when you install the operating system in the first place. Enter your root password and press enter again. As you can see, it's saying that Nmap is already installed the newest version since I'm running Parrot Security operating system. Now, should you be running this operating system or even Kali Linux, you should receive a similar message and the installation is already done. If you are using some other distribution, let's say even Black Arc, Arch Linux or Manjaro, anything like that, the installation steps will be slightly different. This sudo apt install nmap command is for distributions that are derived from Debian and Ubuntu. If you want to install in Arch Linux based distributions, you have to use their package manager, which is known as PAMAC. But that is for a different step. And if you want to get into ethical hacking, the best way to start is by learning either Kali Linux or Parrot Security. Now that the installation is done, we're going to learn how to use Nmap. One of the most basic functions of Nmap is to identify active hosts on the network. We can do this by using a ping scan. The ping scan identifies all of the IP addresses that are currently online without sending any packets to these hosts. Now to run the ping scan, we're going to write Nmap. The flag we're going to mention over here is SP. Now these flags are the different traits of the Nmap scan. Depending on what flag we use, we can send different kinds of requests to the host that we are scanning. Now, before moving forward with this, let me open another terminal over here and check the IP address. We're going to write the command ifconfig and find the subnet in which this system is present. As you can see, the IP address is 192.168.72.131. Now this operating system is being run on a virtual machine software known as VMware. The VMware in itself is running on a Windows 10 operating system. Considering they are now a part of the local network, this IP address is of private security, and the Windows operating system, which is the host system in my scenario, will fall in this particular subnet. So to run our scan, we're going to target 192.168.72.1/24. This command then returns a list of hosts on your network and the total number of assigned IP addresses. This is going to be capital P. Yeah. If you spot any hosts or IP addresses on that list that you cannot account for, you can then run further commands to investigate them further. As of right now, you can see the machine that is the parrot security. This IP address can be detected in the subnet. The 192.168.72.1 is my local Windows machine that is running VMware software and ultimately this virtual machine. The 72.2 is the DHCP server that hosts the internet connection of the parrot security. This we can ignore for now. Now, the Windows machine that we have over here, let's run some tests on that. We're going to clear our terminal and we can close this actually. When scanning hosts, Nmap commands can use server names, IPv4 addresses, or IPv6 addresses. A basic Nmap command will produce information about the given host. To run a basic port scan, we can just use Nmap along with the IP. Now, as we remember, the IP is 192.168.72.1. This is the IP of my local Windows 10 machine. As you can see, it shows the ports that are open and the particular servers that these ports are running. Now, we can also have a detection of the operating system. Now, mind you, this is not 100% correct, and the reliability depends on the installation and what kind of fingerprinting measures are available. Now, since this does TCP/IP fingerprinting, it needs some extra permissions. The flag that we are going to use is nmap -o along with the same IP address. Like I said, since this does TCP/IP fingerprinting, it requires root privileges. Now, to provide root privileges, we're just going to add the nmap and sudo keyword. Going to repeat the same command that we wrote above. As you can see, it has successfully detected that I am running Microsoft Windows 10 with this MAC address. It has also shown the correct build number of the Windows 10 system that I am using. This is useful for troubleshooting, scanning for few vulnerabilities, or even locating some services that need to be updated. Now, to get the necessary information about these services, for example, what versions they are using, we have a command known as SV, which stands for service version. We use the same IP address and press enter. Now, as you can see, the scan is complete, and if you can check the results of the scan above here, we don't see any version number for the services. Here, we can actually check what version they are running. Now, this becomes helpful when we are trying to find specific versions to exploit. For example, if VMware Workstation 16.1.2 had some particular vulnerability, we can exploit it by checking this command. Apart from the host scanning, port scanning is one of the most basic utilities. There are a few ways that this command can be customized as well. For example, I have already checked that the 443 command is open, but I have found out after running this lengthy scan. Let's say I only want to check if the port 443 is open. Nmap. I'm going to use the flag of -p, which stands for port, and give 443 as an argument here. using the same IP address. And you can see it says it's open. But we already knew it is open. Let's say there was something else. If let's say we're going to scan if the Apache web server port is open, which usually runs on 80. Obviously, since I'm not running an Apache web server, it says it's closed. Now we can combine these two commands by running both ports simultaneously. To do that, we can just put a comma and complete the rest similarly. As expected, 80 is closed and 443 is open. Another feature of Nmap for port scanning is showing of ranges. Now ranges can be beneficial when you're trying to see up to a certain limit. For example, Nmap -p, we're going to check what ports are open between 100 to let's say 2000. This acts as a range. Everything else is the same. And it checks all ports in the range of 100 to 2000. Whatever ports is open in between that range, it can be mentioned over here. We're going to clear the screen now. Another flag that can be used with Nmap is the SS command. This runs a stealth scan, which is a little harder to detect if you're the IT admin of the system that is being scanned. The results will more or less be the same, although this will need elevated root privileges. 2.1. As you can see, this is more or less similar to a port scan. It just adds an extra MAC address as well for good measure. But like I said, it's more about the stealth. The normal scans usually are easier to detect when the logs are being checked. Stealth scans are relatively tougher to check. On much more intricate systems, this takes longer as well. Now that we're done with port scanning, let's look at a vulnerable machine. The system that you're scanning right now is my own personal system, with everything is pretty locked down as much as it can be. There is an attack box running in the cloud, the IP address of which is over here. Now, to be able to get into this network, we need to connect to their personal network using a VPN. So what I'm going to do is switch to a different workspace over here. I'm going to open a terminal, and if you can see over here, there is a hacktest.ovpn file. I'm going to connect to their VPN network using this OVPN file. And once we get the initialization sequence completed message, we know that the connection has been established. Like we discussed, this is the vulnerable device IP. We're going to copy this and we're going to try to ping this. Let's open a new terminal. We're going to try to ping this and check if we are able to reach this machine. And as you can see, we're getting a reply back, which means we are now part of the local network where the vulnerable machine is present. Let's run a service scan map with the respective versions. We ran the similar scan on my local machine, where we were able to detect what version each service was running. What we're going to do over here is by checking what kind of services are open on the machine running on the cloud, we're going to decide what we are going to do next, and we're going to see if Nmap alone can point us to a direction where we can gain access to the machine. As you can see, the scan is now completed, and we have some of the ports that are being opened over here and what kind of service they are running. Now, like we discussed, this is the first stage, or sometimes even the second stage, of ethical hacking. What we can infer from here is what are the services that are being run. Now these two ports, 139 and 445, are actually Windows SMB server ports, which are above the Windows Samba server. Now, every service has a particular port attached to it that will be consistent whichever machine you may use. Apache server will always run on port 80. SMB servers will function on these two ports. Now, SMB servers have had a vulnerability known as the Eternal Blue exploit, which was pretty well known. As of right now, from the scan results, we are not able to detect if this machine has the similar vulnerability or not. But since it has the SMB server open, it's worth a shot that we try that exploit on this machine. Now to start the exploit on this, we're going to open another terminal over here, and we're going to use Metasploit for trying the exploit there. We're going to write sudo msf console. msf console is the keyword for launching the Metasploit console. Enter the root password and wait for Metasploit to launch. Other than the ports, we can also see that it has checked the host name of the system and the operating system as well. Now that the Metasploit is open, we're going to launch the exploit. Now before launching, we're going to have to check what exploits are there for the Eternal Blue vulnerability. We're going to use exploit blue, and we're going to check what kind of results we are getting over here. As you can see, serial number 9, exploit Windows SMB MS17010 Eternal Blue. It was first disclosed in 2017 and SMB remote kernel pool corruption. Let's say we're going to use this particular exploit. Now all of this may be confusing if you're not aware of Metasploit, but remember, this is the next stage of ethical hacking, which comes into the gaining access part. We're going to use exploit number 9 as we found above. To use exploit number 9. We're going to set a payload, which is our malicious code that will run on the victim machine. Now we're going to check some options. As you can see, it has by default pointed it to the 445 port, since that is the port where SMB server can be accessed from. The parameter that's missing over here is rhost. The rhost is the IP address of the vulnerable machine, basically the machine in which we want to attack. Now I'm going to use the set command to set the IP address. Now if we check, we now have a victim IP address set. Another parameter that we can change is the lhost. This is basically the IP address of our own system where we are going to gain access. Now if you remember, we had connected using a VPN. So we're going to be assigned a new IP according to the VPN. So if we write ifconfig and check this one, TUN0 is the VPN adapter. This is our IP address that we have been assigned in the server, in the network where the vulnerable machine is present. So we're going to copy this IP address. We're going to move over this workspace, and we're going to set lhost with that IP address. With that, our options are set. Now we're going to run exploit, and it's going to check if Samba server vulnerability is present. As you can see, it has written that the target is vulnerable to this particular exploit. It's going to send the malicious code, and the malicious code is set in the payload that we sent above. And we now have the shell command of the Windows machine. As you can see, C Windows System 32. To be sure that this is in fact this Windows machine that is being used, we're going to write ipconfig, which is a Windows only shell command. As you can see, this is the IP address that was assigned to the victim machine. Now, while the major part of this process was done on Metasploit, we would not have reached this stage had we not found out that the 139 and 445 ports are open, which basically pointed us that we can try the Eternal Blue exploit of the Windows Samba servers. Similarly, all the scans that we run serve as a preface to the actual stages or the actual hacking stages of the campaigns. This SV command was necessary because we could check what are the exact services that are being running. In some cases, if an Apache server is being run, there are particular versions which have particular exploits. Those exploits will not work on other versions. So we're going to have to check what particular version is being run and accordingly apply the exploit. That can be done in the Metasploit, or you can run some other tool. But what exact exploit we have to run and which vulnerability we have to target, that is where Nmap comes to help.
Hope you learned something new today. If you have any questions or doubts regarding this, please feel free to let us know in the comments below and we will get back to you as soon as possible. Subscribe to our channel for more informative content like this, and thank you for watching.
Hi there, if you like this video, subscribe to the Simplilearn YouTube channel and click here to watch similar videos. To nerd up and get certified, click here.